The fork clattered against my husband's plate, the sound unnaturally loud in the sudden silence of the private dining room. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, had her hand pressed to her chest, her perfectly coiffed silver hair seeming to vibrate with indignation. Her mouth was a perfect O of shock. "Sarah, what in God's name do you think you're doing?" she whispered, her voice a venomous hiss that cut through the restaurant's expensive quiet. I didn't look at her. My gaze was fixed on the young waitress, Maria, whose eyes were wide, brimming with tears she was desperately trying to hold back. I pushed the credit card slip gently across the starched white linen toward her. On the tip line, I had written in firm, clear numbers, $10,000. "For your tuition," I said softly, my voice steady for the first time in years, "for your fresh start." Before Maria could even stammer a thank you, a choked gasp came from Eleanor's side of the table, followed by the distinct heavy thud of a body slumping out of a chair and onto the plush carpet. My husband, David, just stared, paralyzed, and in that moment, I felt nothing but a profound, chilling calm. That calm had been earned over 2 decades of swallowing my own voice. When I met David, I was a budding graphic designer with a portfolio full of dreams and a tiny apartment that smelled of oil paints and ambition. He was a law student with a brilliant mind and a laugh that could fill a room. We were a team. I worked 2 jobs to support us while he studied, typing his papers late into the night, brewing endless pots of coffee, believing in our future. My dreams weren't canceled. They were just on pause. His parents, Eleanor and Richard, never saw it that way. From the moment David introduced me, I was a project, a placeholder, until someone more suitable came along. I remember our first Thanksgiving at their country club home. Eleanor picked apart my simple, homemade pumpkin pie with the precision of a surgeon. "It's rustic, dear," she'd said, a tight smile not reaching her eyes. She talked about David's ex-girlfriend, a banker's daughter, and the wonderful charities her family supported. I was the girl from a middle-class family in Ohio who had dared to love her son. When David's career took off, my role solidified. I became the silent partner, the architect of our perfect life. I designed the interiors of our beautiful homes, managed the household staff, and raised our 2 children, Emily and Leo, with all the love and attention I had. I was the PTA mom, the soccer coach, the one who remembered birthdays and anniversaries and food allergies. I created a seamless, elegant world so David could focus on becoming one of the top litigators in the state. The money that flowed in wasn't his money. It was the result of our shared effort. He was the engine, but I was the chassis, the wheels, the entire support system holding it all together. But in his family's eyes, my contributions were invisible. They were just expected, like the polished silver or the fresh flowers on the mantel. I was part of the decor. Over the years, I let my own passions wither. My design portfolio gathered dust in the attic. The woman who loved bold colors and sharp lines began to dress in muted beiges and soft grays, anything to avoid drawing attention, to avoid Eleanor's critical eye. I tried for David's sake. I hosted their parties, laughed at Richard's tired jokes, and endured Eleanor's endless, subtle put-downs. She'd praise my sister-in-law for her impressive career in marketing, then turn to me and say, "And Sarah does such a wonderful job keeping the house. It's a talent of a sort." Each word was a tiny paper cut, and after 20 years, I was bleeding from 1,000 invisible wounds. David saw it. I know he did. In the quiet of our bedroom, he'd sometimes hold me and say, "Don't let her get to you." But he never once said, "I won't let her treat you this way." He chose peace over my dignity, every single time. And slowly, piece by piece, I began to disappear. I became a ghost in my own life, my only purpose to serve the comfort and ambitions of everyone else. The erosion of my place in the family wasn't a single dramatic event. It was a death by 1,000 slights, a slow, creeping tide of exclusion that left me stranded. It became most apparent during the family trips, which had evolved from joyful vacations into carefully orchestrated showcases of the family's wealth and status, with me as a peripheral character. Last year's trip to Aspen was a masterclass in their casual cruelty. David's brother Robert and his wife Jennifer had planned the entire thing. They booked a sprawling chalet with a private chef. The daily itinerary was circulated in a group chat I was conveniently left out of. I only found out about the plans when David would mention them offhand. "Oh, everyone's going heli-skiing tomorrow morning," he'd say, while scrolling through his phone. When I asked if I could join, he'd give me a placating look. "Honey, it's very advanced. You wouldn't enjoy it. Why don't you have a nice spa day?" I don't ski, but I was never asked if I wanted to learn. I was simply assigned the role of the one who stays behind. One afternoon, I walked into the great room to find Eleanor, Jennifer, and my own daughter, Emily, huddled together, laughing over a photo album from a trip they'd taken to Paris years ago. They fell silent the moment I entered. Jennifer closed the book with a soft thud. "Oh, Sarah, we were just reminiscing." The message was clear. This is our history, and you are not in it. I would sit by the fire, reading a book, a ghost in a fleece jacket, listening to the echoes of their laughter and inside jokes from the other room. They didn't even notice I was there. The financial conversations were the most humiliating. Richard, David, and Robert would sit around the fireplace after dinner, swirling brandy, discussing stock portfolios and real estate investments. I had a degree in economics before I switched to design. I understood the market. Once I tried to offer a thought on a new tech IPO. Richard chuckled, a deep, patronizing sound. "Leave the numbers to us men, Sarah. You just focus on making sure the chef has our breakfast orders right." David said nothing. He just took a sip of his brandy, his eyes fixed on the fire, refusing to meet my gaze. I felt a hot flush of shame creep up my neck. I wasn't a partner. I was senior management for the household staff. Even my role as a mother was being undermined. During a family dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant in New York, our son Leo, then 17, was talking about his college applications. He wanted to study art history. I was thrilled, and we had spent hours discussing potential programs. But in front of everyone, Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. "An artist? Don't be silly, Leo. You have your father's brilliant mind. You'll be a lawyer. Sarah, you must stop filling his head with these frivolous ideas." She spoke as if I were a corrupting influence, a purveyor of foolish dreams that threatened the family dynasty. David, once again, remained silent, simply offering Leo a non-committal, "We'll talk about it, son." He was siding with his mother, invalidating my parenting and my son's dreams in one fell swoop. The final, most cutting moment came during the planning of their 50th wedding anniversary. Eleanor hired a party planner, but delegated all the thankless logistical tasks to me, coordinating RSVPs, arranging transport for out-of-town guests, dealing with dietary restrictions. I spent weeks on the phone. At the party itself, during his toast, Richard thanked everyone. To my wonderful wife, Eleanor, to our sons, David and Robert, and their brilliant wives who have blessed us with such amazing grandchildren. He then paused, looked at Jennifer and said, "And a special thanks to Jennifer for her impeccable taste in helping us select the wine for tonight." I stood there, holding a clipboard with the seating chart I had agonized over for a week, completely erased from the narrative. I hadn't just been forgotten. I had been intentionally omitted. I was the help. And in that moment, something inside me didn't just crack, it turned to ice. The breaking point came not with a bang, but with the quiet closing of a hotel room door in Florence. It was the trip of a lifetime, a celebration of David and I's 25th wedding anniversary. Or at least, that's what it was supposed to be. Eleanor and Richard had decided to join us, turning our romantic getaway into another family affair. The tension had been simmering for days, the air thick with Eleanor's critiques of my Italian pronunciation and Richard's loud pronouncements about the inferiority of the local wine compared to his Napa collection. I tried to plaster on a smile for David's sake, for the memory of the young couple we once were, who had dreamed of seeing the Uffizi Gallery together. The final evening, we had reservations at a small, exclusive restaurant on the other side of the Arno. It was the one part of the trip I had planned, my one contribution. As I was getting ready, I overheard David on the phone with his mother in the adjoining suite. His voice was low, placating. "I know, Mom. I'll talk to her. Just try to be nice tonight. It's our anniversary." A pause. "No, she's not being difficult, she's just sensitive." Sensitive. That's what I was. Not disrespected, not ignored, not systematically belittled for 2 decades. Just sensitive. When I walked out of the bathroom, David was putting on his jacket. He wouldn't look at me. "Mom's feeling a bit tired," he said, his voice strained. "She and Dad are going to have a quiet dinner sent up to their room. So, it will just be us." For a fleeting moment, relief washed over me. Just us. But then I saw the lie in his eyes, the way he fidgeted with his cuffs, the way he avoided my gaze. My heart began to pound a slow, heavy drumbeat of dread. "Just us?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He finally looked at me, and his expression was a cocktail of guilt and exasperation. "Look, Sarah, let's just have a nice quiet dinner. No drama tonight, okay?" The word drama struck me like a slap. My pain, my feelings, my very existence had been reduced to drama. I felt a cold fury rise within me. "The drama, David," I said, my voice shaking, "is that your mother has spent this entire trip treating me like a hired companion, and you have stood by and let her." "Oh, here we go," he sighed, throwing his hands up. "I knew this was coming. Can't you just let it go for one night? For me?" And that was it. Not for us. For him. So he could have a peaceful evening without the unpleasantness of having to defend his wife. I stood there, frozen. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply said, "No, I don't think I can." He stared at me for a long moment, his jaw tight. "Fine," he said, the word clipped and cold. "I'm going to go check on them." He walked out, closing the door to our suite with a soft, definitive click. I waited. 1 hour, then 2. I called his phone. It went straight to voicemail. I called his parents' room. No answer. Around 10 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from my daughter, Emily. A picture of David, Eleanor, and Richard, all smiling, raising glasses of Prosecco. The caption read, "Mom, where are you? Having the best anniversary dinner at La Giostra. Dad said you weren't feeling well. Hope you feel better." They hadn't gone to their room. They had gone to my reservation, to our anniversary dinner. Without me. They had left me. Alone in a foreign country, on the day that was supposed to celebrate our life together, they had simply erased me. The betrayal was so complete, so absolute, it stole the air from my lungs. I sank onto the bed, the silence of the room roaring in my ears. I was not sensitive. I was not drama. I was, to them, nothing. I don't know how long I sat on that bed, staring at the brocade wallpaper. The vibrant city of Florence outside my window felt 1,000,000 miles away. My world had shrunk to the 4 walls of that suffocatingly luxurious hotel room. Sometime after midnight, a primal need to escape propelled me to my feet. I grabbed my purse and a light shawl, left the hotel keycard on the nightstand, and walked out into the cool Tuscan night. I walked without direction, my feet carrying me across the Ponte Vecchio, past shuttered shops and quiet piazzas. The city, so full of life during the day, was now hushed and sleeping, its beauty a painful contrast to the ugliness in my heart. My tears finally came, silent and hot, tracing paths down my cheeks. I felt utterly, devastatingly alone. Lost in the labyrinth of narrow cobblestone streets, I stumbled into a tiny, brightly lit square I hadn't seen before. Tucked into a corner was a small workshop, its wooden door slightly ajar, spilling warm yellow light onto the stones. The scent of aged leather and beeswax hung in the air. Peeking inside, I saw an elderly woman, her face a road map of wrinkles, her hands gnarled but steady as she stitched a piece of dark leather with a thick needle and thread. She looked up, her bright dark eyes meeting mine. She must have seen the desolation on my face because her expression softened instantly. She didn't speak, but gestured with her chin for me to come in. Hesitantly, I stepped inside. The shop was a treasure trove of handmade journals, bags, and belts. It was a space of creation, of tangible things made with care and skill. The woman, who I later learned was named Sophia, put down her work. She pointed to a small wooden stool, and then shuffled to a corner where a small electric kettle sat. Without a word, she prepared a cup of chamomile tea, her movements efficient and comforting. She handed me the steaming mug, her warm, dry fingers brushing against mine. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the only sounds the ticking of an old clock and the distant chime of a bell tower. My Italian was rudimentary at best, and her English was just as limited. But the language of human kindness needed no translation. "Triste," she said softly, pointing to my eyes. "Sad." I could only nod, a fresh wave of tears welling. She patted her own heart. "Il cuore? Rotto?" The heart? Broken? "Si," I whispered, the word a painful exhale. "Rotto." Sophia nodded slowly, a deep understanding in her eyes. She didn't press for details. Instead, she picked up a small, beautifully bound leather journal from her workbench. It was a deep teal color, the leather soft and supple. She pressed it into my hands. Then she took a pen and wrote on the first page in elegant, sloping script, La tua storia non è finita. Scrivi il prossimo capitolo. My rusty Italian was good enough to understand. Your story is not over. Write the next chapter. It was such a simple gesture, but it pierced through the fog of my grief with a clarity that was staggering. All these years, I had let others write my story. Eleanor with her judgments, David with his silent complicity. They had written me as a supporting character, a footnote in their grand narrative. Sophia, a complete stranger, saw me not as a broken object, but as an author with a pen still in her hand. I left her shop an hour later, clutching the journal to my chest like a lifeline. I didn't go back to the hotel. I found a small, clean pension nearby, paid in cash for a room, and for the first time in 25 years, I felt the quiet, terrifying, and exhilarating flicker of a life that was entirely my own. The flight back to the United States was a 10-hour-long meditation in a state of icy clarity. The grief and humiliation had crystallized into something hard and unyielding. Resolve. When I landed, I didn't go home to our sprawling, empty house. I checked into a long-stay hotel in the city, a clean, anonymous space that was blessedly free of memories. For 3 days, I did nothing but think. I replayed 2 decades of my life, not with the hurt of a victim, but with the analytical detachment of an auditor. And then I remembered. A conversation from years ago when David's law firm was just starting to take off. He wanted to incorporate a holding company for our investments and future real estate acquisitions to protect our assets. I was there, at the lawyer's office. Dressed in my usual beige, I'd sat quietly while the men talked. But when it came time to sign the documents, the lawyer, a meticulous older gentleman, had insisted I read what I was signing. It's just a formality, honey, David had said, trying to rush me along. But I had read it. The name of the company was D&S Holdings LLC, David and Sarah. I wasn't just his wife. I was a 50% equity partner. At the time, it felt like a romantic gesture. Now I realized it was a legal fact he and his family had conveniently forgotten. I had not just decorated the house, I had co-owned the corporation that bought it. I hadn't just supported his career, I was a legal partner in the financial entity that held all its fruits. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was adrenaline. I found the number for a top-tier divorce and asset lawyer, a woman renowned for her discretion and her ferocity. Her name was Catherine Pearson. Our first phone call was a revelation. I laid out the facts, my voice even and steady, detailing the formation of the LLC, the properties purchased under its name, the investment accounts it held. I could almost hear Catherine smiling through the phone. Mrs. Preston, she said, her voice crisp and confident, your husband and his family have made a very common and very costly mistake. They have confused your role in the home with your stake in the assets. From what you're telling me, you are not entitled to half of the marital assets. You are the legal owner of half of the central corporation. That's a much stronger position. They haven't just abandoned a wife, they've abandoned a business partner. She explained the implications. I could freeze the accounts. I could force a buyout of my half of the business, which would mean a full valuation of every asset, the firm, the stocks, the 3 properties. I could even petition to dissolve the LLC, which would trigger a fire sale of everything they held dear. The power I held was immense. What do you want to do, Sarah? Catherine asked, her tone shifting from legal analysis to personal counsel. We can be aggressive, or we can be strategic. We can send a letter that will feel like a nuclear bomb, or we can make a quiet, surgical first move. I thought of Eleanor's sneer, of Richard's dismissive chuckle, of David's cowardly silence. I thought of the woman I was, the one who painted and dreamed and built, and the woman I had become, the one who dressed in beige to disappear. I don't want a war, Catherine, I said, my voice low but firm. I want what's mine. I want them to understand that the invisible woman they discarded was the one holding the entire structure up. Let's be surgical. Freeze the primary investment account, the one they use for their daily luxuries, the country club memberships, the vacation funds, the line of credit for Jennifer's shopping trips. Let's start there. Consider it done, Catherine replied. The official notice of legal separation and the motion to freeze the D&S Holdings account will be delivered to your husband's office by courier tomorrow morning. I suspect your phone will be ringing shortly after. After I hung up, I stood and looked at my reflection in the hotel window. I saw the lines of worry and sadness around my eyes, but for the first time, I also saw a glint of steel. I wasn't the woman they left in Florence anymore. I was the 50% equity partner of D&S Holdings LLC, and I was just getting started. The first tremor hit less than 24 hours after my call with Catherine. David called, not once, but 17 times. Then came the texts, a frantic waterfall of them. "Sarah, what is this? Call me. My accounts are frozen. The firm's credit is frozen. This is a mistake. Catherine Pearson? Are you insane? You are destroying everything. Please, Sarah, we need to talk." I read them all with a strange sense of detachment, like a scientist observing a chemical reaction. The panic was palpable. I didn't respond. I had been instructed by Catherine to let all communication go through her, and the silence was a power I had never wielded before. The wider fallout came in waves, and I heard about it through the one channel they couldn't control. My son, Leo. He called me, his voice a mixture of confusion and concern. "Mom, what's going on? Grandma Eleanor is having a complete meltdown. Her card was declined at the club spa, and they told her membership was suspended pending payment. Grandpa is on the phone yelling at his bank." I was calm and honest with Leo. "Your father and I are separating, honey. This is just the legal process of separating our finances, which were more intertwined than anyone realized. I didn't poison him against his father. I just stated the facts." The stories he relayed over the next few weeks painted a grimly satisfying picture. Eleanor, whose entire social standing was built on the foundation of Richard's and David's wealth, was suddenly adrift. The family had to cancel their annual charity gala table, a source of immense pride for her. She had to return a new Mercedes she had just leased. According to Leo, she spent most of her days either weeping with rage or making bitter, pointed remarks about gold digging and ingratitude to anyone who would listen. The irony was so thick, I could have choked on it. David, stripped of his unlimited financial cushion, was forced to confront the reality of his lifestyle. He had to put the Aspen Chalet on the market to begin generating liquidity for my eventual buyout. He had to let go of the private chef and the full-time housekeeper. My sister-in-law, Jennifer, who judged me for not having a career, was apparently furious that her quarterly allowance from the family investment fund had vanished. Suddenly, my invisible work of managing a complex household and budget didn't seem so trivial. The most telling moment came about a month into the proceedings. David left a long, rambling voicemail. It was a different tone, not angry, but desperate and whining. "I just don't understand how we're supposed to manage, Sarah. The property taxes on the house are due. The lawn service is threatening to quit. I tried to make your pot roast recipe the other night and almost set off the smoke alarm. This is a mess. The whole house is falling apart without you." I listened to it twice. He didn't say, "I'm falling apart without you." He said the house was. He didn't miss me, the person, the partner. He missed the free labor, the seamless comfort, the well-oiled machine I had run for 2 decades. It was the final, pathetic confirmation that I had made the right choice. They hadn't valued me. They had valued my function. And now that the function was gone, they were flailing, exposed as utterly incompetent at managing the very life they so arrogantly lorded over me. From the quiet of my new apartment, watching their gilded world tarnish, I felt not triumph, but a quiet, profound sense of justice. With a significant portion of my assets unfrozen and accessible, I didn't buy a new mansion or a flashy car. I invested in myself, in the woman who had been dormant for 25 years. The first thing I did was buy a one-way ticket back to Florence. Not to the opulent hotels of my past life, but to a small, sun-drenched apartment in the Oltrarno district, the Artisans' Quarter, just a few streets away from Sophia's leather shop. My days took on a new rhythm, one dictated by my own desires. Mornings started with a walk to a local pasticceria for a cappuccino and a cornetto, where I'd practice my burgeoning Italian with the friendly barista. I enrolled in an intensive language course, and the challenge of wrestling with verb conjugations and rolling my R's was exhilarating. It was a part of my brain that had been asleep, and waking it up felt like a renaissance. I bought a professional-grade camera and started taking pictures again. But instead of the posed, perfect family portraits I used to stage, I captured life as I saw it. The craggy lines on an old man's face as he read his newspaper, the vibrant chaos of the Mercato Centrale, the way the evening light turned the Arno River to liquid gold. I saw beauty everywhere, in the imperfections, in the authentic moments. I was no longer composing a scene for others to admire. I was capturing the world for myself. My apartment became my sanctuary. The walls were a warm terracotta, and I filled it not with expensive designer furniture, but with pieces I found in flea markets and antique shops. A beautifully worn wooden table, mismatched ceramic bowls, a comfortable armchair upholstered in deep blue velvet. I hung my own photographs on the walls. For the first time, my home was a reflection of me, not a statement of my husband's success. I reconnected with Sophia, the artisan who had handed me the journal. We would have coffee once a week. With my improving Italian, we moved past simple gestures to real conversations. She told me about her late husband, about raising her children in this tiny shop, about the pride she took in her craft. She was a wellspring of quiet wisdom and strength. She and other new friends, a British expat who taught art history, a local chef who showed me how to make proper pasta from scratch, formed my new community. These friendships weren't based on social standing or strategic alliances. They were built on shared passions and mutual respect. One afternoon, while developing photos in a local darkroom, I felt a wave of pure, unadulterated joy. It was so profound it almost brought me to tears. It wasn't the loud, performative happiness of a family vacation or a fancy party. It was a quiet, deep contentment. The scent of developing chemicals, the magic of an image slowly appearing on paper, the knowledge that I had created this moment, this life, entirely on my own. I had stripped away everything that was expected of me, and what was left was me, authentic, creative, and finally, breathtakingly free. I was no longer a ghost in my own life. I was the artist, the author, and the subject of the portrait, all at once. About a year after I had settled into my new life in Florence, an email arrived that pierced through the peaceful bubble I had so carefully constructed. The subject line simply read, "Thinking of you." It was from my grandson, Leo. He was in his second year of university now, studying the art history I had always encouraged him to pursue. His message wasn't a casual hello, it was a long, thoughtful letter that he must have spent hours composing. I opened it with a trembling hand, my heart bracing for what it might contain. Subject, thinking of you. Dear Grandma Sarah, I don't even know where to begin, and I'm sorry this is coming in an email, but I wanted to make sure I said everything right without getting choked up or lost. I've been doing a lot of thinking this past year, about everything, about what happened. I'm older now, and I see things more clearly, and I just wanted to say, I am so sorry. I'm sorry for how we treated you, how they treated you, and I'm sorry that I stood by and let it happen. I was a kid, and I was scared of Grandma Eleanor, and scared of upsetting Dad, but that's not an excuse. I saw it. I saw the little comments, the way they'd talk over you, the way they made you feel small. I remember that dinner in New York when you were the only one who was excited about me wanting to study art, and Grandma Eleanor shut it down. I saw the look on your face. I saw it all, and I did nothing, and that's something I have to live with. This last year, living without you, has been telling. The house is just a big, quiet, sad building now. All the warmth is gone. Dad tries, but he's lost. Grandma Eleanor is just bitter and angry all the time. It's like without you there to hold everything together, the whole thing just collapsed into a pile of resentment and expensive furniture. They don't talk about you. It's like they're trying to pretend you never existed. But I remember. I'm in a class this semester on Renaissance art, and all I can think about is you. I think about how you used to have books on Caravaggio on the coffee table, and how you tried to teach me about perspective when I was 10. You were the one who planted this seed in me, and now that I'm here, studying it, I feel closer to you than ever, even though you're an ocean away. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I miss you. Not the person who organized the holidays or made sure Dad's suits were always pressed. I miss you. I miss your real laugh, the one I only heard when we were alone, looking at one of your photography books. I miss the person you were when no one else was around. I don't know what your life is like now, but I hope it's happy. You deserve to be happy. I don't want anything from you, and I'm not asking you to forgive anyone. But I would really love, if you were open to it, to talk to you. Maybe a call sometime? I want to tell you about my classes. I want to hear about your life. I just want my grandmother back. Love, Leo. I read the email 3 times, the words blurring through my tears. These weren't the hot, angry tears of betrayal I had cried in that Florence hotel room. They were tears of profound, aching validation. Someone had seen me. The real me. A child, yes, but he had seen me. And in his apology, he wasn't just speaking for himself. He was acknowledging a truth his entire family had spent decades denying. He wasn't asking for a return to the past. He was asking for a connection in the present, based on who we truly were. The barrier around my heart, so carefully constructed, developed its first tender crack. I let Leo's email sit for a full day, not out of hesitation, but out of a need to honor the weight of his words. I walked along the Arno, my camera hanging unused around my neck, and thought about the boy he was and the man he was becoming. I thought about cycles, about the generational patterns of silence and complicity. His message was an attempt to break that cycle. My response had to do the same. I sat at my worn wooden table, the afternoon sun streaming through the window, and began to type. I wrote, not as the wounded wife or the vengeful ex, but as Sarah. Simply, Sarah. Subject, thinking of you. My dearest Leo, thank you for your email. I've read it more times than I can count. Every word meant the world to me. Please, never feel you have to apologize for being a child in a difficult situation. What you saw was real, and I thank you for having the courage to acknowledge it now. That takes a strength that many adults never find. Your words, especially about my photography books and our talks about art, were a gift. They were a reminder of a part of myself I thought I had lost forever. To know that those moments were real for you too, that they planted a seed, is the greatest validation a grandmother could ask for. I am so incredibly proud of you for pursuing your passion, no matter what anyone else thought. Don't ever let anyone dim that light. You asked about my life here. It's quiet, and it's my own. I found my way back to my art, to my photography. I spend my days getting lost in the narrow streets of Florence, learning a new language, and making friends who know me only as Sarah, the woman who loves the color teal and takes too many pictures of doors. It is a happy life, Leo, a peaceful one. It took me a long time to realize that I wasn't just running from a life that hurt me, but running towards a life that was waiting for me. I want you to understand something important. The life your father and I had is over. The fractures in my relationship with him and your grandmother are not your fault, but they are real and they are permanent. I have forgiven them, for my own sake, so I don't have to carry their weight with me. But forgiveness and reconciliation are two very different things. I cannot go back to being the woman I was, or to the family dynamic that almost erased me. My peace depends on that boundary. But you, my sweet Leo, you are not a boundary. You are a bridge. A bridge to a future I would very much like to be a part of. My relationship with you is, and always will be, separate. It belongs only to us. So, to answer your question, yes, I would love nothing more than to talk. Tell me everything about your classes. Tell me which Renaissance painter is blowing your mind this week. Let's schedule a video call. I want to see your face, and I want to show you my little apartment and the view from my window. You didn't lose your grandmother, Leo. You just had to wait for her to find herself again. With all my love, Grandma Sarah hitting send felt like the final, definitive act of my transformation. It wasn't about the money, or the house, or the revenge. It was never about that. It was about reclaiming my own narrative. The story wasn't the scorned wife who got her revenge. It was the woman who remembered who she was and chose to write her own next chapter. I looked out my window at the terracotta rooftops of Florence, at the swallows dipping and soaring in the endless blue sky. My story wasn't over. In fact, it felt like it had just truly begun. If Sarah's story of reclaiming her worth and finding her voice resonated with you, please give this video a like to show your support. So many of us have felt invisible at some point in our lives. For the brave souls in our community, share in the comments. Have you ever had a turning point moment where you decided to write your own next chapter? Your stories give strength to us all. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story of resilience, justice, and powerful transformation. Welcome to the community.